You've probably heard the word karma, right? It's usually boiled down to something simple like what goes around comes around. But in the Buddhist teachings, karma is so much more than that. It's this incredibly detailed, profound system, the very engine that drives our existence. So today, we're going to pop the hood and really dig into the mechanics of karma using the amazing analysis from the renowned meditation master, the Pa-Auk Tawya Sayadaw.
Here's our game plan. First, we'll look at the fundamental problem that Kamma is trying to explain. Then we'll nail down what it actually is. From there, we'll unpack its complex machinery through 12 different categories, see the different jobs it can do, and finally, we'll get to the ultimate purpose, how you can learn to transcend the entire system.
All right, so first things first. Before we can even begin to understand the solution, we have to get a really good grasp of the problem. And from this point of view, the problem is this endless and frankly exhausting cycle of birth, death, and then rebirth.
The Buddha described this cycle as having no clear beginning. You can't point to a first day. It's a process that's constantly fueled by two main things: ignorance, not seeing the true nature of reality, and the craving that springs from that ignorance. This is the huge stage where the whole drama of karma plays out.
You know, every single turn of this wheel involves some kind of suffering. Getting older, getting sick, losing things, and, eventually, death. So the really big question is, what's the mechanism here? What's the fuel that keeps this engine of rebirth chugging along, life after life? Well, the answer is karma.
So what is karma, really? To get this right, we have to go way beyond the simple idea of it being just action or some kind of fate. The teaching here is way more specific and, honestly, more empowering.
In the original texts, Kamma is identified with a very specific mental factor called cetana. Think of it as the intention, the will, the mental push that comes before and directs any action. So karma isn't the physical act of, say, giving someone a gift, and it's not the result of them receiving it. Karma is the volition, the intention to give in the first place.
And this isn't just someone's interpretation. The Buddha's own words put the spotlight squarely on the mind. It doesn't matter if an action happens through your body, your words, or just inside your own head. It's the intention behind it that is the karma.
So basically, every single time we act with intention, that volition leaves behind a kind of latent energy, this kamma sati. It's like planting a seed. This potency gets carried along in our mind stream, just waiting for the right conditions to ripen and produce its result, which could be later in this life or in some life way down the road. Okay, so now we know karma is the intention that creates this future potential. But how does that potential actually play out? The Buddha laid out this incredibly systematic framework, organizing the workings of karma into 12 distinct categories.
Now, don't worry, it's not as complicated as it sounds. These 12 categories are actually split into 3 simple groups of 4. The first group is all about when a karma takes effect. The second is about the order or priority it has, and the third is about the specific function or job that it does. Let's look at this first group, the timeline. Some karma is presently effective, meaning it ripens in the very same life you create it. Then there's subsequently effective karma, which is guaranteed to give its result in your very next life. Indefinitely effective karma is like a wild card. It can ripen at any point in the distant future. And finally, some karma can just expire. It becomes lapsed if the right conditions for it to sprout never show up. The next group is all about priority. So, at that crucial moment of death, which karma gets to decide your next birth? Well, there's a pecking order. Weighty karma, we're talking really powerful stuff, good or bad, always jumps to the front of the line, no question. If there's no weighty karma, then the system looks at your habitual karma, what you did over and over again. If neither of those, then near-death karma takes over, which is a strong memory that pops up at the end of life. And if all else fails, there's accomplished karma, which is basically any other action from your past.
So, we've covered when it happens and in what order. Now we get to the really fascinating part. The 4 different roles a karma can play. You see, it's not always just a simple one action, one result kind of deal.
This shows just how dynamic this system is. Productive karma is the main event. It's what generates a rebirth. But then other karmas from your past can jump in and modify that. A reinforcing karma acts like a support, making a good life even better. A frustrating karma does the opposite. It weakens the result, maybe bringing sickness into an otherwise lucky life. And then there's the most dramatic one, interceptive karma. It can completely bulldoze the result of a weaker karma and substitute its own, for better or for worse.
So what kinds of actions are we actually talking about here? Well, the teachings lay them out pretty clearly in these 10 courses of unwholesome and wholesome Kamma, across our body, speech, and mind. On the left, you've got actions that are rooted in things like greed, hatred, and delusion. And on the right, you see their direct counterparts, wholesome, skillful actions rooted in generosity, loving-kindness, and wisdom.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because the quality of our intention is a huge deal. Not all good actions are created equal. An action could be double-rooted. Maybe it comes from good intentions, like non-greed and non-hatred. That's great. But a way more powerful action is triple-rooted. That's when you add wisdom to the mix. It means you're not just being kind, you actually understand why it matters, how Kamma works. And as this chart shows, that superior triple-rooted Kamma is what creates a superior rebirth, one where your consciousness itself is equipped with those same positive qualities right from the start.
So this brings us to the ultimate goal. You might be thinking the whole point is to just rack up a high score of good Kamma to get a better future life. But that's not quite it. The real reason to understand this whole complex system is to find a way to step off the merry-go-round completely. This is called the unworking of Kamma. It's a brilliant idea, really. If ignorance and craving are the fuel for the engine of rebirth, what happens if you cut off the fuel supply? You do this by developing profound insight knowledge, or vipassana, where you see reality as it truly is, constantly changing, ultimately unsatisfying, and without any permanent self. That insight is the direct antidote to ignorance.
And as this wisdom gets stronger and stronger, all that stored-up karmic potency from countless past lives begins to lose its power. It can't generate future rebirths anymore. This whole process leads to the attainment of Nibbāna, the final irreversible end of the entire cycle of suffering. The engine just comes to a complete stop.
The text leaves us with this beautiful, powerful metaphor. A lotus grows up from the mud, but when it blossoms, it's pristine, completely untouched by the water it came from. In the same way, understanding the intricate workings of Kamma isn't meant to be a deterministic trap. It's supposed to be a map, a guide showing how you, through wisdom and skillful action, can rise above the murky waters of the cycle of rebirth.